Hi, my name is Ember. I'm 32 years old, and I've always believed I could read people well, until that evening changed everything. I had been casually dating Mark for a few months, a man I thought I knew, a man who seemed ordinary and kind. But that night, as I sat across from him at a small Ohio steakhouse, everything felt off. A simple business dinner suddenly twisted into a moment I would never forget. And just as my mind tried to settle into normal conversation, a waitress approached me with a folded note that would shatter my world. "I'm his wife of 8 years. You're the other woman." Before we get into this story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories on family drama, betrayal, and emotional courage. The restaurant was quiet for a Thursday evening, with only a few scattered tables, and the low hum of conversation blending with the clinking of cutlery. I remember the smell first, a mix of garlic butter and sizzling steak, comforting in a way that made the night feel normal. Mark had suggested this place. "It's cozy. You'll love it," he'd said. But as soon as I walked in, I noticed subtle signs that tugged at my instincts. A few of the servers kept glancing in our direction, whispering just low enough to be almost inaudible. I shrugged it off, blaming my nerves for overthinking. Mark, as usual, was already seated, fiddling with his napkin and phone. He smiled as I slid into the booth across from him, but something about his smile didn't reach his eyes. I tried to shake the feeling, forcing a small grin. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was brutal." He waved it off, but I caught the way his hand slightly trembled when he reached for his water glass. It was subtle, easy to miss, but it made me pause. He cleared his throat. "Don't worry about it. I'm just glad you're here," he said, voice too steady, almost rehearsed. Something inside me tightened. The waitress approached our table with a polite smile, clipboard in hand. I noticed she lingered slightly longer than necessary, her eyes shifting nervously between Mark and me. I felt an almost imperceptible tension in the air, but I smiled and ordered my usual grilled salmon, lightly seasoned, with a side of asparagus. Mark chose a steak medium rare. Everything should have felt ordinary, but it didn't. As we waited for our meals, Mark tried to make small talk about his work. He described a project he'd been overseeing, highlighting successes in a way that seemed almost too perfect. I listened, nodding politely, but my mind kept wandering back to the waitress. She moved quietly around the restaurant, but there was a pattern, a glance, a hesitation, a brief tilt of her head toward our table that kept sending a ripple of unease through me. I tried to push it aside, telling myself I was overreacting. After all, I'd seen him nervous before, sure, but never like this. And then came the first hint that nothing about this night was normal. A folded piece of paper appeared near my plate, pushed forward ever so slightly, like a gentle nudge, but with purpose behind it. I stared at it, trying to process how it got there. I knew Mark hadn't left it. My pulse picked up. With hands trembling just a little, I picked up the note, unfolding it slowly, almost afraid of what it might say. And then my world tipped upside down. The message, written in careful handwriting, read, "I'm his wife of 8 years. You're the other woman." My throat tightened. My vision narrowed to the words in front of me. I blinked, thinking I must have misread them, but the letters stayed stubbornly clear. I set the note down, my mind spinning, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I forced a smile as Mark continued talking, completely unaware, or pretending to be unaware, of the storm brewing across the table. My hands were shaking under the table as I tried to steady myself. I needed air, needed space to breathe. Excusing myself, I said, "I need to step out for a moment." My voice calm but brittle. Walking toward the restroom, I felt my legs weaken, not from fatigue, but from shock. I kept glancing back at the table, Where Mark laughed at something I couldn't hear, his composure flawless. The normalcy of his actions made the note even more devastating. How could someone so calm be responsible for this betrayal? My mind raced, recalling every seemingly innocent interaction, every little lie I might have overlooked. I entered the hallway behind the restaurant, quiet and dimly lit. The smell of cleaning supplies mixed with the faint aroma of cooked meat, a stark contrast to the warmth of the main dining room. And then she appeared, the waitress, or rather, the woman who had just revealed herself to be his wife. Her eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. She spoke softly, "Ember, I need you to listen." I froze. The moment was surreal, cinematic in its quiet intensity. I wanted to run, scream, question, but my voice wouldn't come. She continued, explaining her presence at the restaurant, how she had suspected Mark's behavior for years, and how she had finally decided to act. She wasn't angry in a cartoonish way. She was exhausted, weary from years of subtle manipulation, lies, and betrayal. "Why are you telling me this?" I managed to whisper. My words felt small in the emptiness of the hallway, but her gaze held me in place. "Because someone has to know the truth before it's too late," she replied. "You didn't deserve this, Ember. I didn't either." The simplicity of her statement struck me harder than any confrontation could have. There was no theatrics, no yelling, just raw, quiet honesty. And suddenly, I realized how carefully I had been deceived, not only by Mark, but by the comfort of believing I knew someone. I felt a wave of anger, sadness, and disbelief all at once. I leaned against the wall, feeling my knees tremble as I tried to process everything. The bustling restaurant outside the hallway seemed like a different world, a normalcy I could no longer trust. Every laugh, every clink of silverware, every flicker of movement felt like a reminder of how ordinary life could conceal extraordinary deceit. I wanted answers, but I also knew I needed to breathe before asking them. The wife, let's call her Anna, I later learned, waited patiently, giving me the space to collect my thoughts. I studied her face, noticing lines that hinted at years of worry, frustration, and quiet endurance. She had survived this for 8 long years, and now she was giving me a chance to understand before it went further. My mind drifted back to Mark at the table. I remembered moments I'd brushed off, late nights, sudden cancellations, vague excuses. Every memory now painted a new, painful picture. The trust one had taken for granted, the belief that love could shield me from deception, crumbled under the weight of that simple note. A moment later, I noticed my reflection in a small mirror near the hallway. My face was pale, my eyes wide with disbelief. Yet beneath that shock, I felt the first spark of determination. I had a choice: sink into despair, confront him recklessly, or step carefully into this storm with clarity. I didn't know what the right move was yet, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, the muffled sounds of the restaurant reminded me that life continued outside this bubble. Patrons laughed, servers moved with their usual rhythm, and Mark continued smiling at a conversation he thought I had not overheard. Everything was normal, or so he believed. But in that small hallway, reality had shifted for me forever. As I stood there, I remembered my own life, my friends, my work, my routines. None of it had prepared me for this moment. I realized how carefully deception could hide behind familiarity, how trust could be manipulated into belief. And yet, as heavy as the betrayal felt, there was clarity in this revelation. I could see the truth now, and that clarity, as painful as it was, would guide my next steps. By the time I returned to the table, I moved with a calm that belied the storm within. I placed my napkin neatly on my lap, forced a polite smile, and said, "Sorry about that." Mark looked up, unsuspecting, his tone casual. "Everything okay?" I nodded, voice steady but soft. Yes, just needed a moment. But everything had changed. The air between us was charged with a tension he didn't know existed, a secret that had shifted the balance of power in the quietest, most devastating way. And I knew that no matter how the dinner ended, nothing would ever feel ordinary again. The note, the hallway, Anna's presence, all of it would linger in my mind for years to come. That dinner, which had begun like any normal evening, had fractured my sense of reality, trust, and love in one precise, unforgettable moment. I sank against the cold wall of the hallway, the folded note still trembling in my fingers. My breathing felt loud in the silence, each exhale sharp against my chest. The words didn't blur or fade, and yet I found myself reading them again, hoping some trick of the paper might erase the truth. "I'm his wife of 8 years. You're the other woman." My vision blurred slightly, not from tears, though I felt them pressing behind my eyes, but from the dizzying weight of betrayal. Anna, the wife, stood a few steps away, leaning casually against the wall, though there was tension in the way her shoulders tightened with every slight movement. Her eyes, a mix of weariness and determination, fixed on me, compelling me to listen. Her voice, calm but urgent, cut through the chaos in my mind. "Ember, I didn't want to do this here, but I can't let him keep lying to you," she said softly, her words deliberate, measured. I wanted to laugh, or maybe scream, but nothing came out. The silence between us was dense, filled with the hum of the restaurant through the thin hallway walls. I swallowed, forcing my voice to cooperate. "Why me? Why now?" My questions sounded weak, almost like a whisper, yet I meant every ounce of it. Anna shifted slightly, folding her hands in front of her. "Because this has been going on too long. Because he thinks he can manipulate both of us, keep his little world balanced. And he's not just lying, he's been hiding everything." She paused, giving me a moment to absorb that statement. "You deserve the truth before it hurts any more than it has to." I shook my head, trying to process her words. I thought he was different. I thought we had something real." My hands shook as I clenched the note. Reality stung sharply. Every memory of our time together flickered with a new lens. Dinner dates, late-night messages, weekends that suddenly made sense in their secrecy, all twisted into fragments of deception. Anna's expression softened, a flicker of empathy crossing her features. "I know, and that's why it's so hard to watch. You trusted him. I trusted him too, in my own way. I wanted to believe he could change. But people rarely change when it comes to this." Her voice dropped slightly, almost a whisper, heavy with resignation. A shiver ran through me. The restaurant noises seemed distant now, almost unreal. Forks clinking, muffled conversations. The soft whir of the ceiling fan above. They belonged to another life. My mind was fully focused on Anna's presence, the revelation of the note, and the emotional earthquake it had set off inside me. I sank a little lower against the wall. "So, you're really his wife? 8 years? And all this time, I didn't know." My voice cracked slightly, betraying my disbelief and pain. Each word felt like a confession of my own ignorance of trusting a man who had been living a double life right under my nose. "Yes," Anna said softly, almost mournfully. 8 years. And it hasn't been perfect. Ember. Far from it. But I stayed because I thought people could change, thought he could be faithful. I thought we had a life together that was worth preserving. And then he started seeing you." She paused, her eyes not leaving mine. "You didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve this either." My chest tightened further. I feel like everything I thought I knew is a lie. Every smile, every moment, he lied through all of it. My voice trembled, a mixture of shock, sorrow, and something else I wasn't ready to name yet. Anger. Anna nodded. He's good at lying. Too good. And he's careful. You were never meant to know. You were an accident in his calculated world. Her words hit me like a fist. An accident. I echoed, quietly, the word tasting bitter. So everything, I thought I was special. I was just a part of his game. Her jaw tightened. Not a game, but you were part of a pattern. And now it's out in the open. There's no pretending anymore. She glanced toward the restaurant, where Mark laughed at some joke I couldn't hear. That laugh, the casual, unbothered laugh, felt like a dagger slicing through me. I realized he had no idea this confrontation was happening, no idea that his carefully built world was beginning to crumble. I clutched the note again. How long? How long has he been lying like this? I asked, my voice barely audible, almost as if I feared the answer. Anna exhaled slowly. Years. Months before I even knew he was stepping out. I found little things, small clues, receipts, whispers, but I wanted to believe. You understand that, don't you? The hope that love can overcome everything. Her voice wavered, filled with both frustration and sadness. I nodded slightly, though my stomach twisted with guilt and disbelief. I thought I was in love. I thought he felt the same. My eyes stung. I could feel the betrayal deep inside my bones, a cold, heavy weight pressing down on me. I wanted to hate him with every fiber of my being, but there was also confusion, a haunting question of why someone could be so deceptive yet charming. Anna stepped closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Ember, I didn't give you this note to scare you. I gave it to you so you could see him clearly before he manipulates you any further. And believe me, he will. He's skilled at it. You need to be prepared. I shivered at her words, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Prepared? For what exactly? I asked, my voice tight, strained with emotion. She hesitated, then said, for the truth of who he is, and for what you might have to do to protect yourself. The lies aren't just emotional. They can spill into your life in ways you can't predict if you stay blind to them. Her seriousness struck me harder than any words of anger could. I realized in that moment that the betrayal wasn't just about a relationship. It was about control, manipulation, and the consequences of trust misplaced. I felt a sharp pang of fear. Fear not of Mark, but of the unraveling of the life I thought I knew. The note seemed to burn in my pocket, a tangible reminder that my reality had shifted in an instant. I touched it gently, as if handling it too roughly would make the truth vanish. Though I knew it would not, I was forced to confront every interaction, every whispered promise, every seemingly innocent date and gesture, now reframed under the light of deception. Anna's gaze softened as she noticed the storm brewing in me. I know this is overwhelming. Believe me, I know. I want to give you space, but I also want you to understand that you're not alone. You're not the first, and hopefully you won't be the last to wake up to his lies. Her voice carried a quiet, weary wisdom that cut through the haze of panic in my mind. I leaned back against the wall, the hallway suddenly feeling both too small and endless at the same time. I don't even know how to feel. I whispered. Anger, grief, disbelief, and a deep, gnawing hurt all battled for dominance inside me. I wanted to shout at him, demand answers, but I also wanted to vanish to escape from the suffocating weight of realization. Anna tilted her head, almost sympathetically. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Take a breath. Look at the situation clearly. Understand that the note is just the start. It's the key to seeing everything as it truly is. Her words, though gentle, sparked something inside me. Amid the shock and despair, there was clarity, a momentary shard of focus in the chaos. I realized that while the betrayal cut deep, I could choose how to respond. I could crumble, or I could face the reality and begin to reclaim my agency. I sank fully onto the edge of a small ledge near the hallway wall, the note clutched in both hands. My pulse raced, my mind replaying every scene, every conversation, every gesture I had misinterpreted. And yet, in the midst of this emotional turmoil, I felt a strange, almost defiant spark. Anna watched silently, giving me the space to process, to grieve, and to confront my own confusion. After a long pause, I finally said, voice trembling but determined, I want to understand everything. Every lie, every truth he's hidden. I can't pretend anymore. She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile forming at the corners of her lips. Good. That's all you can do right now. Face it, and I'll help you see it clearly. Ember, you deserve to know the truth without it destroying you further. I took a deep breath, feeling my chest expand with both fear and resolve. The note had split my world open, yes, but it had also cracked the illusion that I had been living under. And while the pain was raw, I knew that acknowledgement was the first step toward reclaiming myself. Even as the distant sounds of the restaurant seeped into the hallway again, I felt a strange sense of purpose. The night was far from over, and the revelations had only begun, but I was no longer blind. The note had forced me awake, and for the first time, I understood that facing the truth, however painful, was the only way to move forward. Sitting there in the narrow hallway, the silence between us felt less suffocating than before. The initial shock had started to ebb, leaving behind a raw, tense energy. I could sense Anna's presence as more than just a warning. There was purpose in her quiet demeanor, an unspoken understanding that something needed to happen, and I needed to hear it straight. I don't know where to start, I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. I still held the note, pressing it to my chest, as if it were some fragile shield against the pain. There's so much I didn't see, so many pieces I ignored. How do I even begin to understand him? Or us? Anna let out a small, almost imperceptible sigh. We start with the truth. Ember. Everything else falls into place once we see it clearly. Her words weren't dramatic. They were matter of fact, like someone describing a map to navigate a dangerous forest. She motioned toward a small corner by a coat rack, dimly lit but private. Sit. We'll talk. I want you to understand everything, not in fragments, but as a whole picture. I hesitated for a moment, then sank into the corner she indicated. The hall was narrow, claustrophobic even, but somehow sitting there with her made it feel like a small sanctuary from the chaos I had just walked into. Anna sat opposite me, folding her hands on her lap. Her eyes, those steady, unwavering eyes, met mine and held me in a way I had never experienced. Let me start by telling you about him, as I knew him, she began. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, yet underneath it, there was a tension that hinted at years of suppressed anger and disappointment. We met right out of college, full of hope, full of dreams. He was charming, ambitious, everything you'd expect someone to fall for. And I did. I really did. Her eyes softened, and I noticed a slight quiver at the corner of her lips as she continued. But charm can be dangerous. He knew exactly what to say, what to do, to make people feel special, to make them trust him. And that includes you, Ember. That includes me. But the difference is we were in different stages of the deception. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Stages of deception? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Anna replied, leaning forward slightly, her voice lowering in intensity. I was married to him, living day by day with small doubts, tiny inconsistencies I couldn't quite place. And you were brought in after he had perfected the art of manipulation. You were unsuspecting, open, believing in the possibility of genuine connection. The weight of her words pressed down on me. I remembered small, seemingly innocent details, the missed calls, the vague explanations for canceled plans, his occasional distant looks. Each memory now felt like a piece of evidence in a puzzle I had no idea I was a part of. I can't believe I didn't see it, I admitted, feeling a flush of shame and disbelief. I thought I knew him. I thought he was different. I trusted him. And now, my voice faltered, the rest lost in a shiver of emotion. Anna reached out, placing a gentle hand near mine, though not touching it. That's the thing, Ember. He made it impossible to see. That's how he worked. He created illusions so convincing that you didn't question them until they were too entangled to ignore. You didn't fail. He just planned it well. Her words, though kind, carried a weight that forced me to consider the depth of the betrayal. This wasn't just a casual lie or a simple omission. It was a carefully constructed world of deceit that had quietly folded around both of us, trapping us in different roles, but with the same victim, himself at the center, controlling the narrative. I shivered again, not from cold, but from the creeping realization that I was dealing with someone who had spent years orchestrating his life to appear innocent while deceiving everyone closest to him. And yet, despite the shock, there was a strange sense of clarity in hearing it directly from Anna. Do you want me to tell you about the incidents I noticed? She asked, almost tentatively. The ones that should have been red flags for both of us. I nodded, eager and terrified in equal measure. Yes, I need to understand everything. No detail is too small. Anna's eyes darkened slightly as she recalled memories she clearly wished had been different. It started with small lies, bills he didn't mention, weekend trips he claimed were work-related, arguments I thought were resolved, but he always had another explanation ready. And then the other women. You weren't the first, Ember. He has a history of keeping people in carefully controlled silos, so no one overlaps. Until now. I felt a chill run through me. Other women? I asked, my voice trembling, not out of disbelief, but the sudden weight of understanding the scope of his deceit. Yes, but it's not what you think. He never really changed. He just got better at lying to everyone, including me. Her words hung heavy in the air, and I could feel the gravity of her statement pressing down like an unseen force. He was dangerous in his own way, not physically, but emotionally. He knew how to manipulate, how to keep everyone believing he was the man they wanted him to be. I remembered the subtle signs, the late-night phone calls he tried to hide, the excuses that always seemed plausible, the moments I had dismissed as minor annoyances. They weren't minor. They were the very threads of a carefully woven web. Anna's gaze softened again, almost sympathetically. And now, Ember, you have to decide how you want to deal with this. Because once the truth is out, it changes everything. You can't go back to believing him in the same way. I clenched my fists in my lap, my mind a whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. How do you cope with it? I asked, my voice quiet, almost vulnerable. I feel like my whole world has shifted. She gave a small, weary smile. Coping isn't the right word. Understanding is. Accepting that the person you loved, or thought you loved, has flaws that aren't fixable. That's where the strength comes from. And now you have a choice. You can let this break you, or you can let it make you stronger. I absorbed her words in silence, feeling the weight of the truth settle over me. Strength wasn't something I had considered in this moment of betrayal. I had felt only shock, confusion, and anger. But as I listened to Anna, I realized she had endured this for years, navigating the same storm, and had emerged with a quiet resilience that I could learn from. What about him? I asked, almost reluctantly. Do I confront him? Or do I just let it be? Anna shook her head, slightly. Confrontation without preparation will only give him more control. He thrives on drama that distracts from the truth. If you choose to confront him, it has to be from a position of clarity, with facts and boundaries, not just emotion. That's how we level the playing field. I felt a flicker of something, determination, maybe, that I hadn't felt since the note had arrived. I realized that understanding the full picture, seeing the intricate web he had spun, gave me the advantage I hadn't had before. Knowledge was power, and I intended to use it. The hallway felt smaller now, more intimate, as we sat together dissecting the pieces of deception, mapping out his behaviors, and piecing together a timeline of lies. We spoke in low tones, almost conspiratorial, each revelation a small victory against the illusion he had created. I felt a sense of solidarity with Anna, a bond forged in the fire of betrayal. She wasn't an adversary. She wasn't a threat. She was a co-victim, someone who understood the depth of the manipulation in a way no one else could. And that realization, strange as it felt, was oddly comforting. We continued talking for what felt like hours, recounting incidents I had long ignored, noticing patterns that had seemed innocent but now revealed themselves as deliberate manipulations. Every lie he had told, every omission, every casual excuse, it all formed a tapestry of deceit that was almost breathtaking in its intricacy. I found myself asking questions I hadn't dared to before. Did he ever care? Did any of it mean anything? Anna's expression darkened, a shadow of sadness crossing her features. I don't know. Sometimes, maybe, but caring doesn't excuse betrayal. And sometimes people wear love as a mask to hide selfishness. That's what we're dealing with here. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Love as a mask. That was it. That was the key to understanding everything I had felt, everything I had ignored, and everything I had allowed myself to believe. As the minutes stretched into the evening, I realized that the hallway no longer felt like a trap. It had become a safe space, a place where I could face the truth, acknowledge the pain, and begin to form a plan for what came next. The note had opened my world, but sitting here with Anna, dissecting the lies, it was beginning to feel like I was starting to reclaim it. And in that moment, I understood something crucial. We weren't enemies. We weren't rivals in this. We were two women facing one truth, and together, that truth was something we could confront, endure, and eventually use to regain control of our lives. After hours of talking with Anna, a quiet resolve settled over me. The shock, the betrayal, the confusion, all of it still lingered, but beneath it was a growing determination. The note hadn't just split my world open, it had given me clarity. And clarity meant action. I could no longer remain passive. I had to start untangling the web he had spun. Okay, I said, finally, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to map this out. Every lie, every manipulation, everything. Anna nodded, and we began methodically retracing his steps, like detectives piecing together a puzzle that had been hidden for years. We started small. Dates, dinners, trips, late-night calls, anything that could be cross-referenced between what he told me and what he told her. Surprisingly, the patterns emerged almost immediately. He had a predictable rhythm, a careful schedule, and a talent for crafting alibis. Every time he disappeared or made excuses, it wasn't random, it was orchestrated. Look at this, Anna said, sliding her phone across the small ledge where we were sitting. She had compiled a few screenshots she had saved over the months, messages he had sent her, never meant for me, but coincidentally saved by some backup she hadn't erased. Notice how he timestamps things almost too perfectly. He thinks we won't notice, but it's obvious once you look closely. I stared at the screen, astonished. The patterns were undeniable. His stories, the excuses, Even the small gestures of attention I had cherished, they were all strategically placed. My stomach churned, not from surprise anymore, but from the creeping awareness of how deeply I had been deceived. As we dug further, we uncovered more subtle lies. There were evenings he claimed to have worked late that he had actually spent out with someone else, or worse, orchestrating meetings with both of us while keeping each interaction carefully compartmentalized. Every interaction now carried a sinister weight, a manipulative precision that left me both horrified and strangely fascinated. "I can't believe how detailed he is," I murmured. "Every move calculated. It's almost impressive if it weren't so cruel." Anna's lips pressed together. "It's cruel because it's deliberate. He spent years crafting this persona, manipulating trust, and keeping people, me, you, anyone who mattered, just enough in the dark to believe in him." Her eyes softened briefly. "I want you to know, Ember, none of this is your fault. He's good at hiding who he really is." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and reluctant admiration at the complexity of his deceit. It was one thing to lie. It was another to construct an entire life designed to deceive multiple people at the same time. But admiration quickly turned into a cold resolve. If he had thought he could manipulate us both, I realized he had underestimated the power of two women working together. We started tracing his patterns using his work schedule as a base. Anna had saved copies of emails, receipts, and even some personal notes from previous years, creating a timeline that exposed contradictions in his stories. Every lie he had told was like a loose thread waiting to unravel. Pull one, and the whole fabric of deception began to show its weakness. At one point, Anna held up a receipt from a hotel. He claimed he had stayed at alone for work. "He wasn't here that night," she said, her voice low but firm. "Check the timestamps on his messages. He was texting me while supposedly working. And look, he even made sure to check in somewhere else so no one would notice." I leaned in, feeling my chest tighten. I remembered the same evening vaguely, a canceled dinner he had promised me, claiming an urgent client meeting. Every detail now made sense. The sudden anxiety I had felt, the way he had seemed distracted, it wasn't stress at work. It was the careful manipulation of two lives, and I had been oblivious. As we cataloged each lie, I began to notice how meticulous he was in his control of perception. Even in small gestures like how he complimented me, how he asked about my day, it all carried a dual purpose, make me feel cherished while maintaining a separate, hidden life. The more we uncovered, the more my sense of betrayal deepened. Anna looked at me, her face serious. "He thrives on our confusion. That's the point. If we don't see the whole picture, he keeps control. Every doubt, every insecurity, it's fuel for him." I clenched my fists, anger flaring. I can't believe I fell for this. I can't believe he thought he could get away with it. My voice shook, though not with weakness. The emotion was raw, fiery. I realized that anger, if channeled correctly, could be a powerful tool in untangling the mess he had created. We decided to go further. We traced financial trails, noting expenses that didn't align with his explanations. Gifts he had given me suddenly had context, purchased during trips he claimed were work-related, secretly intended to keep both of us placated. Each discovery sent a wave of shock through me, but it also reinforced a growing understanding. Knowledge was power. Every piece of evidence we unearthed made me less vulnerable to his lies. Hours passed, and the narrow hallway became our headquarters. We pulled out every scrap of information, from text messages to email chains, receipts, and photos. Every thread we tugged at revealed more deception. And each revelation brought clarity, not just about him, but about ourselves, how we had been manipulated, but also how resilient we could be when faced with the truth. At one point, I picked up my phone and reviewed messages I had saved reading them through a lens I hadn't used before. Every casual text now revealed hidden layers. Every affectionate phrase masked intent. The realization stung, but it also felt empowering. I wasn't ignorant anymore. I had insight, and with Anna by my side, I felt less alone in navigating the aftermath. We discovered inconsistencies in travel logs, dinner receipts, and even mundane events, occasions he had said were with friends or family that he had actually used to cover interactions with one of us. Each discovery was a blow to the illusion of normalcy I had held on to, but at the same time, it was a relief to finally see the full picture. The confusion that had plagued me was slowly dissolving into understanding. Anna noticed my tense posture and spoke gently. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Pulling at these threads isn't easy. It's like opening a box of tangled strings. You never know what will come out first. But you're stronger than you think, and I'm here. Her reassurance grounded me. I realized that the anger and betrayal didn't have to consume me entirely. I could channel them into something constructive. I could untangle the lies methodically without letting the emotional chaos derail me. As we continued, we uncovered moments of manipulation I had never suspected. He had pitted us against each other emotionally, knowing that uncertainty and jealousy would keep us distracted. It was subtle, almost invisible, until you looked at the timeline as a whole. Every argument I had with him, every moment I had doubted myself, it had been orchestrated. A cold, burning clarity settled over me. The realization was both horrifying and liberating. He wasn't untouchable. He was human, and humans can be exposed. Every lie, every deceitful act we documented was evidence of his patterns, his weaknesses. I felt a strange sense of empowerment building inside me, a fire that promised I wouldn't be a passive victim any longer. By the end of the evening, the narrow hallway no longer felt confining. It felt like a war room. Anna and I had mapped out dozens of lies, traced inconsistencies, and created a tangible timeline of manipulation. Each thread we pulled revealed another hidden truth, another layer of deceit. The note had been the first strike, but the work we were doing now, the careful, meticulous unraveling, was how we would reclaim control. As we gathered the final pieces of evidence for the night, I looked at Anna and realized something profound. Our shared experience, our alliance, had transformed this betrayal into a source of power. Two women, wronged but now awakened, were no longer pawns in his game. We were strategizing, reclaiming control, and learning to trust our instincts again. And for the first time, I felt a strange, almost exhilarating sense of hope. Hope that even in the midst of deception, betrayal, and heartbreak, truth had the power to set us free. I stared at the hallway ceiling, tracing the faint cracks with my eyes, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. The night had been long. Hours of uncovering truths, dissecting lies, and tracing every thread of his manipulation. I felt exhausted, emotionally raw, but also strangely alive. There was a clarity now, something I hadn't felt since before the betrayal, an unshakable sense that I could choose how this story ended for me. Anna's presence beside me had been comforting, almost grounding. She wasn't just a witness to his lies. She was a partner in unraveling them, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this storm. Yet even with her support, the weight of what had happened pressed heavily on my chest. I needed to act, to reclaim the power he had stolen, but I also needed to decide what kind of ending I wanted for myself. I can't keep letting him dictate my life. I murmured, almost to myself. Every choice he's made, every lie he's told, it's been controlling me without my realizing it. My hands shook slightly as I held the note again, feeling the paper's weight like a physical anchor to the truth. But I don't want to end up bitter, angry, or consumed by revenge. I need something different. Anna nodded silently, her eyes reflecting a mixture of understanding and encouragement. She didn't interrupt. She knew the moment was mine, a critical pause where the decisions would shape the rest of my life. I realized that the ending I chose had to come from me, not from anger, not from retaliation, not even from the desire to prove him wrong. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes. The first step, I knew, was confronting him, not with the fury I felt, but with clarity. I had the evidence, the timeline, the undeniable proof of his lies. But confrontation alone wasn't enough. It had to be deliberate, controlled, and precise. I wasn't just exposing him, I was protecting myself, reclaiming my dignity, and drawing boundaries he could no longer cross. The next morning, I arrived at his apartment with Anna by my side, our shared evidence organized neatly in folders and printed timelines. The city seemed quieter than usual, almost eerily still, as if it sensed the tension radiating from me. I gripped the doorknob, feeling a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, and knocked. Mark answered, his smile bright and casual, completely unaware of the storm about to hit him. "Hey, Ember. Morning." His words faltered when he noticed the folders in my hands and the seriousness in my expression. His charm, the thing that had lulled me into trust, faltered under the weight of my presence. "I need to talk to you," I said firmly, stepping inside. "And I need you to listen." I laid the folders on the kitchen counter, opening them to reveal the documented lies, the receipts, the timestamps, and the inconsistencies. "This is everything I know now. Every lie, every manipulation, every secret you've kept from me, and Anna." His face paled slightly, but he tried to mask it with a nervous chuckle. "Ember, this isn't necessary. We can talk about this calmly." "No," I interrupted, my voice rising just enough to convey the gravity. "You need to see it. Every detail. I trusted you, Mark. I believed in you. And this," I waved at the folders, the evidence laid bare. "This is the truth." He stared at me, a flicker of panic in his eyes, and I realized that for the first time, he had lost control. His carefully constructed world, the one he had manipulated for years, was crumbling. And I was standing firmly in the middle of the wreckage, no longer a passive observer, no longer the pawn in his game. The confrontation was intense but controlled. I didn't shout, I didn't cry, though the tears threatened to spill, but I spoke with a calm precision that surprised even me. Every question I asked was direct. Every inconsistency I highlighted was backed with evidence. And through it all, I felt a sense of empowerment growing within me. I wasn't just confronting a liar, I was reclaiming my own story. Anna, standing quietly to the side, offered silent support. Her presence reminded me that strength didn't always have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes strength was methodical, composed, and deliberate. And this was my strength, the ability to face betrayal head-on and demand accountability without losing myself in anger or despair. Mark stumbled over his explanations, caught between charm, excuses, and the undeniable truth. He tried to justify, to manipulate, to shift blame. But every tactic failed against the clarity of the evidence. For once, the truth was louder than his lies. And I felt a strange satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from the simple fact that deception could no longer dominate my life. After the confrontation, I left his apartment with Anna beside me, the weight of the past lifted slightly, though the emotional scars remained. I realized that the ending I chose wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about shaming him or proving him wrong. It was about reclaiming my life, my agency, and my sense of self-worth. We walked in silence for a while, letting the city absorb our presence. The streets were beginning to fill with the morning rush, cars honking, people bustling to work, unaware of the personal upheavals occurring in small apartments and narrow hallways. And somehow, the ordinary normalcy of the world around us made my choice feel even more significant. "I think I understand now," I said quietly, breaking the silence. "The ending I choose isn't about him. It's about me. It's about living without the weight of his deception hanging over me." Anna smiled, a mix of relief and pride in her expression. "Exactly, Ember. You can't control him. You can't undo the past, but you can control how you move forward. That's the power you've been reclaiming all night." I nodded, feeling a deep, grounding sense of resolve. It wasn't easy. I knew the path ahead would have challenges, reminders, and moments of doubt, but I also knew that I had made a choice that no one could take away. The ending I chose for myself was autonomy, clarity, and the courage to live truthfully. Over the following weeks, I began restructuring my life. I deleted messages, cut ties with reminders of the lies, and slowly reclaimed spaces in my home and mind that had been dominated by manipulation. I invested time in friendships, personal goals, and small joys that had been overshadowed by deception. Every action reinforced the choice I had made, to live independently, authentically, and without the chains of his lies. Mark attempted contact occasionally, but I maintained boundaries firmly. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't engage in arguments. I simply existed on my terms, a life rebuilt piece by piece, stronger than before. And with each day, I felt a little more liberated, a little more confident, a little more myself. Anna and I remained close, bonded not just by shared betrayal, but by the resilience we discovered within ourselves. We spoke openly, supported each other, and occasionally laughed about the absurdity of some of the manipulations we uncovered. It wasn't a friendship born of comfort. It was one forged in fire, a testament to the strength two women could discover when facing the same truth. One evening, sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea, I reflected on everything. The note that had split my world open, the confrontation that had forced honesty, the threads of lies we had pulled. Each step had led me here. And in that moment, I realized that endings weren't fixed. They were choices shaped by courage, clarity, and the willingness to reclaim agency. The ending I chose for myself wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a spectacle or a scene of vengeance. It was quiet, deliberate, and profoundly liberating. I chose truth over illusion, autonomy over control, and self-respect over manipulation. And in that choice, I found peace, not the absence of pain, but the presence of power and clarity. I thought about my younger self, the woman who had walked into a dinner with excitement and trust, unaware of the storm lurking beneath. And I thought about the woman I had become, the one who faced betrayal, untangled lies, and emerged stronger, wiser, and fully in control of her own story. The contrast was stark, almost shocking, but it filled me with pride. As night fell over the city, the lights reflecting in the distant river and the hum of ordinary life continuing around me, I smiled softly. The ending I chose wasn't about him. It was about me. It was about reclaiming joy, integrity, and self-worth. It was about knowing that no one's lies could define me anymore. And in that quiet, powerful moment, I understood that while betrayal had changed me, it hadn't broken me. I was still Ember, resilient, aware, and free. And that, ultimately, was the ending I had been searching for all along. The note that had once shattered my world now felt like the key to my liberation. I remembered the cold shock when Anna handed it to me, the tremor in my hands as I read the words, and the crushing sense of betrayal that followed. For a long time, it had seemed like the end of everything I believed in, the end of trust, the end of love, the end of who I thought I was. But now, standing in the quiet aftermath, I realized that it was actually the beginning of a life I could shape entirely on my own terms. I wasn't defined by his lies or the illusions he had crafted around me. I was defined by my choices, my resilience, and my willingness to confront the truth, no matter how painful. Each step I had taken, from mapping out his deceptions with Anna, to facing him directly, to rebuilding my own life with intention, had been a reclamation of power I didn't even know I still had. And in reclaiming that power, I had also reclaimed myself. I thought about the nights I had spent replaying conversations, doubting my own judgment, and wondering if I had been naive or weak. Now I understood that what I had experienced was human, real, and completely valid. Falling for someone's charm, trusting their words, opening your heart, it wasn't a flaw. It was courage. The courage to love, to hope, and to believe in connection, even when the outcome wasn't what I had imagined. And courage, I realized, didn't disappear because of betrayal. In fact, it grew stronger when it was tempered by truth. I had chosen to face reality head-on rather than hide in denial, and that choice had transformed the way I viewed myself and the world. The life I had ahead of me no longer included him, no longer revolved around his deceptions or attempts to manipulate my emotions. It included freedom, self-respect, and the ability to trust myself again. I had rebuilt my routines, nurtured relationships that truly mattered, and invested in passions that reminded me I was more than a chapter in someone else's story. I understood now that endings aren't about dramatic confrontations or poetic justice. They're about clarity, growth, and the courage to move forward with intention. I also realized that the journey had given me an unexpected gift, perspective. Seeing Anna's strength, observing her resilience through years of betrayal, and sharing this truth with her had reminded me that no one has to face hardship alone. There is solidarity in shared pain and strength in acknowledging that pain without letting it define you. Together, we had transformed heartbreak into empowerment, deception into clarity, and vulnerability into resolve. As I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of peace that was rare and profound. The note that had once represented devastation now symbolized awakening. I chose my ending not through revenge, not through resentment, but through courage, truth, and the unwavering commitment to honor myself. I had stepped out of the shadow of lies into a life defined by authenticity, control, and resilience. And in that choice, I found freedom, the kind of freedom that can't be taken, manipulated, or stolen. I was Ember, whole and unshaken. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe freely, walk forward confidently, and embrace the life I had intentionally created.